From Hong Kong, Chicago, and the city of Stoke-on-Trent, this is the Classic Lenses podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 140. My name is Simon Forster and we're not joined by Johnny Sisson as he's had to go on a Leica reprogramming event. But we do have Perry G. Hello, Perry.
Hello.
And we have a guest. And we were going to have this guest anyway, but now that Johnny can't be with us, he's going to sort of sit in Johnny's seat. And it's somebody that we've had on the show on a number of occasions, and he's guest hosted with us as well. So we've got a good person to be here this week, and that's Anil Mistry. Hello, Anil.
Hello, folks.
Great to have you back again.
Thank you.
Is this episode 4 with you now? I haven't been keeping track, actually.
I think it is the fourth time. Feels familiar.
Yeah,
I can't remember the last time, though, exactly. I don't know if it was last year. I think it may have been the year before.
Yeah, we do try to want to forget about last year as best we can. Anyway, I mean, we funnily enough, we asked Perry earlier on about what happened last time you were on, because I have no recollection of it and you haven't. And Perry reminded us it was something about strapping webcams to our chests, or at least to your chest, and going out and doing street photography with one.
Yeah,
close.
Yeah, well, it was minutes ago since you last told me, so my memory is actually starting to fade already.
It's like a Sony RX0 through a scarf, but that's kind of like a webcam on your chest.
No, okay. I think it was about actually attaching it to a fake broken arm, like a spy, so that I could get really close up to people and they wouldn't suspect there was a camera embedded in it, so I could get some really, really close shots. But I haven't tried it, and I haven't been arrested for trying it, so that's all good.
Prosthetic cam. Yeah. Right. Well, okay. Well, this week we've got shed loads of emails, and but before we do that, and we won't get through all the emails, but we'll do our best to do as many as we can. But I think it'd be really good to have a catch up with Anil to see what he's been up to since he was last trying to, or not actually going out with a prosthetic camera. So what have you been up to?
Well, I think everyone will agree with me. Last year was bloody awful. This year hasn't started so well. But, last year was strange for me because my sort of main day job, just my industry, essentially died as a result of the lockdowns. So I'd come up with ideas for live events and do sort of live brand experiences and stuff like that. And that just fell to pieces. So my income dropped massively. Week to week, I wasn't sure what was going on. And then, I had a period of something like 8 or 9 weeks where I had zero work at all. And the lovely government in the UK hardly helped me at all. So I was just sort of stuck in this weird situation where I didn't have money coming in. I had to keep myself busy. So I started to, I think one of the challenges last year was I shot a lot less film. But actually, the year started off, the middle of the last year, I decided to finally develop about 22 rolls of film that I'd had sat there. And it was a shock. And jokingly on Twitter, I sort of worked out that it was something like over 700 photographs. And I said, I bet about 70 of them are half decent. And that worked out about right. There were so many crappy shots on there, and just the cost of getting those rolls developed and scanned.
Yeah, well, I was going to say 10% isn't bad, is it? That's pretty good, really.
Yeah, I just realised because normally when I'm commuting in and out of London, I'll take a camera in with me, and I'm just shooting in the in between bits on my commute, and a lot of the time my mind is half engaged in shooting or not really focusing. So. They were just some real crap there. I'm sure I'll find a way of doing something with them one day, but there were some really bad shots. But that coinciding with the lockdown and just the cost of shooting film meant that last year I shot a lot more digital. I've just been going out and to keep my mind busy, just walking. I mean, I was walking and I still am, between 7 and 18 miles a day when I'm not working.
Damn.
Get out, and keep busy and just keep my mind and my body. I'm not good when I've got nothing to do. I just end up worrying about stuff and stressing. I like to be busy and creative. So I started going out a lot and shooting a hell of a lot. And then as the weather got warmer, I live on a beach, so thankfully, we had that. So I mean, literally, I'm talking about 70 meters as the crow flies from my front door is the seafront. It's 2 streets back from where I live. So I started going in the water, and I found this crappy little holiday Fuji cam, waterproof camera that we'd bought. I mean, it was about 7 or 8 years old. I remember I bought it. We went to Turkey with the kids years ago, and we just messed around in the swimming pool with it. And I thought I'd start taking that in the sea, and it became a project because we had a bit of a heat wave last year, if you remember, Simon. And I was going in the sea about 4 times a day just to cool off, and taking the camera with me. And it became a really interesting project because this camera, I mean, the quality of the image, it's essentially probably about a 12 megapixel mobile phone, basically. But it's waterproof. And as the light changes, the sea changes its mood all the time. The sea is constantly doing something different. A slight change in weather, a cloud comes over the sun, the wind comes up, the colors, the lights, it's just beautiful. So playing with this camera and just going under the water and shooting with a flash and all sorts, I ended up with this really nice set of photos. And on Instagram, there I noticed there was a call for images to enter this, not a competition. There was a call for images, basically, by a photographer called Rankin. He was a very famous fashion photographer. And it turned out he was making a TV show called Rankin's 2020 for Sky Arts, where they were just getting photographs that people had been taking during lockdown and talking about the stories behind them. So I entered a bunch of pictures, and 2 of them were actually chosen and shortlisted. And 2 of them ended up in the TV show, and 1 of them ended up in the book. So they actually published a book, and I've got a 2-page spread with one of my pictures and the story behind it. So that was a really nice thing that happened photography-wise for me.
And it's weirdly, it's worth just talking about that photograph as well, because I mean, I haven't got it in front of me at the moment, but I can remember it pretty damn well. And there's like a huge splash in the photograph, yeah. Light coming through, and it's just an absolutely wonderful photo.
Yeah, I was lying on my back in the sea and just floating, and the sun was going down, and I was just splashing. I was sort of backpedaling with my feet, and it was sending splashes up, and I took a shot of the setting sun through the splash. So it had this lovely distorted look, but then also there were drops of water on the lens, which then further distorted what was being seen. And then because the flash went off, there were some areas that were very blurred and abstract. But then there were some areas of just droplets of water caught in just perfect clarity in sort of frozen time. So it was just a really surreal picture. So this thing ended up in a book, and so it was a really nice thing. So there were 2 episodes of the TV show with my pictures in, and then I got the book last week. So that was a nice thing that happened in the year. But essentially, I was just doing a lot of going out with my DSLR, shooting some film. But for cost reasons, and I think a lot of people will be able to identify with that, is shooting more digital, because it's, you can do what you want with a memory card and delete it if you like, if there's crap on there. But the other thing I started doing was actually going through over 5 years of photographs on my drives, and as well as my film scans, starting to look at all my digital work. As you know, when you get better each year with grading shots and learning how to do things, software gets better, and you learn new tricks. So I started readdressing and looking at photographs I'd taken and just reworking them. And that was really nice. It was just quite a nice memorial journey, because you totally forget all this stuff you shoot, and it's just sat there. And to pull it out again and see it was lovely. But then that sort of made me realize that, that was the other thing that happened last year, annoyingly, just before all the lockdowns began in March. I bought a professional printer. So I've got an Epson P600 A3 pigment ink, museum quality, archival quality, all that stuff, printer, which does lovely prints. And I thought I'm going to start selling prints and start doing some shows. And then lockdown happened. So all those plans just died. But with now, starting to relook at my pictures and having a printer for the sort of physical output, it spurred me on to start just thinking of print again. So I think because I live near Brighton, it's about 7 miles away from where I live. I thought, essentially, I literally have thousands of photographs that I've taken on the streets of Brighton, and I thought it was maybe time to do a book. So I started going through all these shots, editing them down, seeing what worked, what didn't. And I ended up making a book, which went into print. Weirdly, this is just the second. Tomorrow will be the second week it's been in print, and it's doing really well. So I made 100 copies, and I'm rubbish at housekeeping and things, and I'm rubbish at doing all the fulfillment. I can't bear it. It's one thing is printing a book and getting it out there, but if you're serious about trying to sell books and get them into people's hands, every single order has to be dealt with personally. And I hate all that. So I thought I'm going to see if I can find a partner, someone I can work with, and sign the books, send them to them, and start to build a relationship. So there's a little brand, a company called Fistful of Books, who sort of specialise, I suppose, in, it's not always all British photographers, but it's sort of British documentary and street photography. And I bought some of their books in the past. There's some really, really interesting ones. There's a photographer there called John Bolton, and I think he's based in Bolton or Bradford. And there's a couple of books I bought of his. One was called Shabash, which was just documenting a Muslim cricket club up in Bradford or Bolton. Just a really nice piece of documentary. And the other one was called Gladiators, and I think he'd been to Thailand and photographed cockfights. But these things are shot, I don't know if they shot with film or digital, but they're just glorious, just black and white, very regal photographs of these cockerels and just that whole world, which is very different. And the whole thing about Fistful of Books is their books are very affordable, but they're genuinely interesting. And I thought it'd be really nice to sort of get on that website. So I got in touch with the guy, Simon Robinson, and we had a chat. And we said, let's give this a try. So I printed 100 books. I signed them all and then sent them to him. And they've been selling really well. They've been selling as far as India, Australia, and people all over the place have got a copy. And I think I've made books before, but in terms of a creative challenge, this one was difficult because I've got so many favourite photographs that I've taken in Brighton over the last 5 years. And literally thousands of them. And to try and get them down into a book was difficult, and also to try and make a book that's affordable as well. It's easy to make an enormous large book, but also I think I've found that you start to fill a book with too much stuff, it detracts and takes away from individual shots. So it's better to have some real killers in there. No filler. I've got
to say, having spoke through the process of what's in front of me at the moment, was I have a copy of the book in front of me. And you've made me so much more comfortable and happier about the fact that this wasn't just what you did last year. This is 5 years worth of work, and I'm really pleased about that, because I'm thinking, damn, this is good. He's just gone out there and absolutely killed it. But 5 years, that makes me feel a whole lot better. So
there's a few from this year, last year, but this is over 5 years. I mean, Brighton Pride, the festival they have every year, is sort of legendary in Brighton. It's full of so many great characters and so many interesting things going on, and I've been sort of religiously capturing that over the years. So I had a lot to choose from, and it was a challenge, just trying to edit it down and to sort of work out what needed to go in the book and what didn't. But also the mood. I was tempted, do you go colour or black and white? Brighton is a very colourful city, but there's something about, especially with photo books, I've done books with colour and black and white, but there's something about black and white I keep coming back to. It just really makes you just think about the core of the shot. It lets your eye be drawn to the tonality of things, and it brings things into sharp focus, and it just pulls away distraction. And there are shots that I think would have looked good in colour, but I think black and white really suits what I wanted in this book. Also, Brighton is, it's a very young city and there's lots of energy, but I was trying to capture not just sort of, Martin Parr style seaside moments, that are quirky, but it's architecturally, Brighton's really interesting. And I wanted this sort of sense of a timeless feel as well. And sort of, I suppose, quite poignant, and black and white works really well for that.
Right. And given that these are photographs shot over a number of years, obviously when you shot them, you wouldn't have had in mind putting them together in a book. So to me, that makes a lot of sense, because to get a visual consistency with a body of color work is challenging in and of itself, right? But to do it as a sort of retrospective exercise would either require some very, heavy-handed color grading for consistency, which might take away from the shots, or you just sort of have to sacrifice that, unified aesthetic, right?
Absolutely.
And I think one of the nice things is, even though there's such a diversity of shots in the book, the fact that they're all shot in and around Brighton gives them that same kind of underlying, slightly quirky and just interesting vibe. So the aesthetic choice makes total sense.
Yeah. Also, I have there's a thing, I think I've talked about it before with street photography. I try to avoid overt technology. It sounds weird. I try to avoid shots of adverts that sort of give a sense of a particular year or anything. Or in particular, I really try to avoid pictures of people using mobile phones, because I just find them deeply annoying. And though they are a part of the times we live in, I just think there's more interesting things to find when you can. And for me, a lot of the challenge is to find images that look and feel timeless in one way or another. And that's what I've really strived to do in this book. But Brighton's great because it's by the sea. You have great light. You also have just the physicality. You have wind. You have, there's energy sort of in the air, and lovely architecture as well, and just quirky shops and people. So the battle really was just bringing it down to it's a 56-page book, A5 book, just a number of shots. I do think at some point there'll probably be a sequel to this book. And it could be that maybe I go the other way and go into color, just for a total change of mood. But I think this first time around, black and white did it. But the hardest bit with books is just hitting the print button and hitting go, because I just not knowing if you got the previous book I'd made, I had a little design error in it, and it really bugged the shit out of me, because knowing that it's on every book, I'm wondering if people noticed it or picked it up. But this one's come out perfectly, so I'm really, really pleased.
you gotta embrace the wabi sabi,
but not wabi crappy. I want that to come out in the photographs, and not in the actual publishing.
Right. That makes sense.
It's interesting that you've not used the. I mean, this is not a word that we particularly use on this show, because we don't tend to talk about this kind of thing. But zine. For me, the word zine is more. I relate that to the sort of. I suppose the size of the format A5 is a zine-like, but for me, a zine is something a little bit more photocopied and punk in spirit. Rough and ready. I'm a designer by trade, and I'm a creative, so I like things to feel good. So I took a lot of time in thinking about the quality of the finish of the cover and getting the weight of the paper right. I wanted this to feel substantial and of quality, if that makes sense, and to just do justice to the images, because I've just learned through doing books in the past which paper stocks work better and what in a tactile sense works, because I want this thing to last. I don't want it to feel like something that ends up just in a cupboard somewhere. I want people to put it with their books, if that makes sense. Yeah. And it is a photo book. There's no two ways about it. Although that said, though, I think that again going back to that word zine, I think you've described exactly what zine means in my head. But really, it's a long time since I've seen anybody actually produce a zine in that way. They do seem to be the quality is generally much higher, yet they still call it a zine.
Yeah, I mean the print quality now and digital print to order is becoming so good that it is getting easy to make things and get them out there and get them published. I think in terms of using the word zine, there's one thing I wanted to keep, which was a sort of a reasonable price point, because that is a challenge as well. You make a book, you want it to sell, you don't want to lose money, you want to make it worth your while, but you've got to find an area where people don't feel they're getting screwed. So I'd like to think the price, which is just £10, is zine-like. But equally, if it was £5, I think I'd be doing myself an injustice. I just want this thing to feel, and also basically if this thing is deliberately 56 pages, if it was 57 pages, I would have had to go up to another level of print with a harder spine and this, that, and the other. So that helps as well. It just help me to keep the price point down. And it's just the thing you learn as you sort of work with a printer. What works and what doesn't. So I feel I've got that down now, and I've worked out, the InDesign template that works really well with all the trims and the gutters and everything sorted out. So each subsequent book becomes easier, and I can be a bit more adventurous.
Yeah. There's I trailered this week's show in a manner by using sort of one of your photographs from this, and it's the I can't remember the name of the painting, but it's the but there's a painting in a box. Well, it's actually a print. It's certainly not the original one.
It's Johan Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring.
That's it.
Yeah, very iconic picture, and it was great. I was walking around in Brighton because everyone's so middle class and lovely, and they like to show off how cultural they are. You walk around the area called Hove, and during lockdown, all the houses, they'd had cardboard boxes outside with things that they were just giving away, and they're all full of British Film Institute classic films and posh books and things, and that was a box, and it had these little pictures in, and it was all very arty, and I'm sure half of it is people aren't just giving it away, they just want to show how cultured they are.
Look at my junk.
No copies of Playboy in there, sadly. It's just all sort of artistic stuff, but very, very funny, actually. You can really tell what the poshest streets are. They're almost in a sort of silent, passive-aggressive competition of who's got the best junk.
Exactly. And that's, but that particular photo of the painting, you just caught the angle of it absolutely perfectly. We're just talking about a cardboard box, and there are at least 3 picture frames in the box, and just poking out above a corner of the box, you've got the girl with the pearl earring just looking directly into the camera, but you can't see all of it, just her eyes and her nose, and it's just alive. I mean, it's an amazing painting in the first place, but it's just being in the box brings it even more to life. Yeah,
I love the fact this is such a piece of classical sort of art history, really. So it's a Dutch master, isn't he, Vermeer? But it's just in a cardboard box, and it's just a sort of a modern day version of where this stuff ends up. But I took about 6 shots of that just to get that angle right, and to make sure that look was. There's that Mona Lisa thing going on, isn't there? There's the classic eyes, the face is at a particular angle, yet the eyes are looking at you. So as a result, they actually follow you around the room. They did that with a lot of paintings in that era. Yeah.
It's an absolute cracker, and we've you've been kind enough to send a PDF over to Hong Kong, so Perry's got eyes on this as well.
Don't you dare print it, Perry.
Oh, it's all good. I won't. I get one, I'll order one.
Knock-off copies of it all around Hong Kong. Or in the ladies' market everywhere.
No, man, I wouldn't dare distribute a book. Anil, one thing I'm always curious about, especially with a book like this, where you're looking back through years and years of photographs, is the curation process. Number one, are these all film or all digital, or a mixed medium?
I would say they're the majority of them. In fact, almost all of them are digital. Because of the nature and the way I go out and shoot this stuff. So I did have, again, hundreds of film photographs. But the challenge with the way I shoot and the kind of things I capture, to capture them with film, as you can see, a lot of the shots in this there are moments that look beautiful and still. So, for example, in about the 4th page in, there's a picture of a man sat outside a coffee shop engrossed in a book, and there's a dog at his feet.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't stop still and capture that. I was walking, I saw him, and I had a 24mm frame lens on my camera. I was literally walking past with the camera at waist height and took the shot, a couple of shots. So I didn't even know if I had it until I got it. So, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, looking through the images and the tonality, I assumed that they were digital, but wasn't sure if it was sort of 100% that medium. But more interestingly, you're going through a lot of images, right? And then you're squeezing them into a book that is not super short, but not incredibly long as well. So can you kind of talk us through your curation process?
Yeah. So first thing I'll do is I went through all my images, I pulled them all together, and then I started just with the image viewer on my Mac, just scrolling through them just to remind myself of things I'd shot. And I started to just add a little yellow highlight on the ones that I liked. So then I pulled them out into a separate folder. Then I went through them again. And then on the ones I liked even more, I thought were real killers, I put a red highlight. So there's some were yellow and some were yellow and red. So now I've got this sort of second set, which are even tighter. Then I did that again, adding blue. So I end up with another folder, which are yellow, red, and blue. So I've sort of stripped this, I funneled down these images into a much tighter set. And then what I'll do is I'll go through them and sort of, because a lot of this is just sort of mood. It's very difficult with images because when you start laying out a book, there's a sort of energy that goes, when you're spreading 2 pages apart, you're trying to create some sort of thing going on. And there's not always necessarily a connection between 2 images across the opposite sides of a page. Sometimes you might have a crazy energetic image and you deliberately put something else on the other side just to calm it down.
Uh-huh. The really interesting thing, to our listeners, we're on webcam, so I can see Anil kind of holding up the book. You sent me a digital copy of it for this show, and it doesn't reflect the kind of layout thinking in anywhere near the same kind of way when you're holding in your hand and kind of looking at each spread as a pair of pages.
Yeah, so sometimes I'll have, for example, there's one shot. My favorite photos is I call it Skater Girl. There was a big skateboard event happening on Brighton seafront. It was about 90% guys on their skateboards. And then I saw this girl. She looked about 9 years old, and she was just zipping past in the foreground. And I just grabbed her, and she's got a great look on her face. She's down wearing a skirt. She's at this low angle, but she looks really intent, really defiant. And what I've done on the opposite page is just a shot of an old couple who seem to be staring across at her. So sometimes there's a sense of interaction between the shots. Sometimes there's a sense of a theme. And then also it's weird. It's, some of my shots, I love seeing a shot in its entirety, and I'm always averse to spreading a shot across the spine of the book. But this time I decided to sort of let go of that fear and let it happen. And so there's another particular shot, which is one of my favorites, which was shot last year. I was on Brighton Pier, and it was a very misty morning. It was very low tide and incredibly windy, and there was absolutely no one on the beach. But I've noticed every year on a particular day, I think it's an African church, the members come to the beach and they walk into the sea one by one, and they're baptized. So we've got there's this really wide shot where it's essentially just sea and shallow waves, but then in one corner on one page it's just these tiny people, and there's a woman being led into the sea and she's being baptized. And so some things just work and give you more of that cinematic scope. I must say that is a challenge with A5, because the problem with photography, once you start putting it in print, you want those prints to be big. So working within an A5 is quite restrictive to a point. Because you want people to be able to sort of look right into the photographs. In an ideal world, I think this book probably would have been A4, but then when you get bigger, you will then want to add more to it, and it starts to change the project into something bigger as well.
Right.
So you've got to you've got to define a few parameters. The other thing I'll do as well, Perry, is I'll write down words, because the hardest thing is to be objective with your own work. So once I've started to plot and put pages down in the book, I'll put words down. So for example, I'll write poignant or sad or particular moods and things, and and I'll assess each image by them and making sure that I'm sort of meeting an overall criteria, because I want the book to have a particular feel across its entirety. And I've got a lot better at not making books feel random, and that way it's a way of sort of isolating some shots that perhaps aren't right.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question about just from memory, right? One of the things I noticed about the book is the vast majority of shots are, street shots, street portraits, people doing things, a lot of diversity, but they're punctuated by images of with no people in them.
Yeah.
And now that you're sort of talking about the layout, there's one image you have in there which is like it's a dead pigeon.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious about where you put that and sort of what's around it. I don't know if you're able to sort of lift that up and show.
Well, I've got the dead pigeon here. Yeah. So the dead pigeon. Basically, okay. I was walking down the street and I saw a dead pigeon, and it was clearly a freshly dead pigeon because it's still very plump. So to the point where it doesn't look damaged, no one's stepped on it, a car hasn't gone over it, there's no maggots in it. It is literally a pigeon that actually just looks like it's lying on its back asleep. And it just looks soft and gentle and sort of at peace, but sad at the same time. On the opposite page to that is one of my favorite photographs that I've ever taken, actually. And again, it was taken on the fly. I was walking past a pub, and there was an old man sat outside the pub. He's got arthritic, knobbly fingers, and he's just sort of looking at his hands. He's got a walking stick.
It's George Bernard Shaw, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. It's a picture that could have come from the early 20th century, because there's nothing in it apart from a rolled-up newspaper that gives you a sense of the era. He's got a cigarette in his hand, and it for me captures the kind of photographs I'd like to capture. And they're very hard to capture in this day and age. So on one side, I've got this old man who's nearing death. On the other side, I've got a pigeon that has achieved death. But then above it, I've got a bunch of mods tinkering with a motorbike, because I felt that trio of images just needed something else, just to bring some life. So essentially, there's a bit of life in death. But on one level, there's no... When you start talking about stuff like that, you sort of have to start getting to analyzing. But I don't try and get all pretentious and deep with this stuff. I think ultimately it's about feel. You look at images, that just feels right next to that image, or these two images are too samey, and you just keep going through your work and going through it again and again until it feels right. And then the other thing I do is I will physically walk out of the room and physically walk back in and sit down and look at things again. And just changing your field of view helps you to with that editing process. And then you think you've got it right, give it a couple of days, come back to it and look again.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think the interesting thing looking at that was just the way that the three images created a natural triangle. Yeah, which kind of it balances out the two pages quite well. So I agree. You don't necessarily want to sit there and analyze it like a English literature class or something, right? But those little decisions, they do. I mean, when I saw the pigeon, my first reaction was, why is there suddenly a random dead pigeon? But in the context of the two pages, it actually balances out the frame. And that's always interesting to me, the kind of idea of like the book as a frame and then each frame has their own frame. And so you've got frameception, right?
That's the other thing, just making sure there's enough of a border around. So there's the odd images that are full bleed, but a lot of them have a bit of a border. And it's always a challenge when you have a small book, when you've got two images together, to make sure they've got enough space around them. That becomes so important, just putting borders around stuff. Otherwise, the images they literally need a frame, don't they?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to say, I really don't want to turn it into a let's talk about photos on the podcast kind of thing.
How dare we talk about photos, a thing that we take with cameras and classic lenses.
Exactly, but there's a couple of observations. The first one is when you were talking about the mods working on their motorbike, they were working on a scooter. As a former motorcycle motorbike rider,
correct.
I feel I have to point that out. And secondly, you mentioned about using words to describe photographs and single words and things like that. I just need to know what the single word was that describes the seagull staring at itself in the mirror.
Yeah. Again, it's poignant, isn't it? That was such a rare moment. I was walking through a market and there was a young seagull. Obviously, living in Brighton, there's loads of seagulls, and you get these sort of baby seagulls which tend to be bigger than their parents for some reason, and they sort of follow their parents around, whining at them all the time. They're really annoying. But this one was by itself, and basically it was a Saturday morning. People were setting out a street market, selling bric-a-brac and old antiques and crap. But someone had leaned some mirrors, antique mirrors, along a wall, and this seagull had landed and had just stopped and was staring at itself in the mirror. And I just couldn't believe that moment was unfolding in front of my eyes. So I got down and I grabbed about 4 or 5 shots. So I've got some where the seagull is looking at itself in the mirror. I've actually got some others where the seagull turned around and was looking at me, so the back of the seagull was in the mirror. But again, that's for me, that is what I would call a sort of uniquely Brighton moment. Yeah, and that's what that would come under.
Yeah, it's a perfect shot. There's no two ways about it, and your position where you took the shot was perfect. Because you could so easily have been in that photograph as well, and you weren't. It's the same trick as they get when they're making TV shows and films and stuff like that. You've pulled the same trick off.
Yeah, it was one of those classic things. You don't realise how lazy you get as a photographer, because I was stood up and I saw this thing happening. And I realised I had to get down to the level of the seagull. So I had to crouch very slowly and carefully so as not to let it make the thing fly off, to get down to its level so that you're sort of seeing the world through its eyes. Otherwise, you're looking down at the thing. It's not the same. You want to be with it and not looking at it. That's another one that I'd love to, annoyingly, I can't make as a print and put up in a gallery and start selling, but one day.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And I think on that note, much as I actually really want to carry on talking about your book and all the photographs in it, because they are wonderful. I mean, it's just full of, of moments of life. There's, there's some things that are, relatively shocking, and there's salacious stuff in there, and then there's just absolute humour, which we've just been talking about with that gull. It's wonderful. So
thank you.
Really well done there. And actually, I think this is actually a good time before we go on to the emails, because we were having a chat and Perry doesn't know about this, and because Johnny's not here to say that we shouldn't do it, we're going to have a competition. And because this copy of City by the Sea by Anil Mistry, which is also branded as Unusual Eye, we didn't really talk about that, which you can in a second. We're going to give this copy away. And I will send it wherever in the world it needs to go, to somebody that wins it. And we thought about this. I say we thought about it. I asked Anil what we're going to do as a competition, and Anil's clever and creative, and he came up with some suggestions. Most of them good, actually, as well.
For once,
but perhaps you might want to explain, and we're going to probably work this one out as we go along. But if you start it off, and then we'll firm things up, and then that will be the competition.
Oh, do you want me to explain what it is?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I came up with the idea of cameragrams. So cameragrams are anagrams that you make from the letters from the names of cameras or lenses. So, okay. For example, what anagram can you make from other words can you make from the letters in Pentax aria? Or what anagram can you make from the words in Maya optic Gorlin, for example? So essentially, pick a camera or a lens name and make something from the letters in that name. Make something new from it, and the best one, judged by whoever, will win the book.
This is going to be good. Then again, I thought the haiku competition was a good idea as well, so I'm probably not the best person to judge these things. But let's just try and throw some rules around it. If we're going to have a camera name and a lens, then that lens and camera have got to go together.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
In the spirit of adapting lenses, I don't know, man.
I think it's either just pick a camera name or pick a lens name, and then come up with, because otherwise it might get very convoluted.
I think the most important rule is: do you have to use every letter once?
Oh yeah,
yeah. You can't double up on a letter. You have to try and use every letter if you can. That's probably going to give you plus points and lead to the book, right? And does it have to be a classic lens, not just any modern lens? It has to be a classic lens.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Well, then we get into the argument: what is a classic lens?
So not an AF lens then.
Yes, not autofocus, unless of course it's a Contax G lens, which we let go. We let that one go. Yeah, okay, and we will. Anybody that wants to enter, if they can enter it via our email rather than sharing it on our Facebook group, if you can email it in to classiclensespodcast@gmail.com. And timescale, should we give it, I don't know, 6 weeks or so? What does that sound like? So
give it until like
end of Feb.
Is that 6 weeks? That's like 4 weeks.
Is it? Oh, right. Oh, yeah, it's a short one as well, anyway, isn't it? Of course, yeah. It's the 28th of January. My word.
What year is this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Exactly.
I still haven't started my tax return. It goes in 2 days. I really need to do that, don't I? Yeah. So I don't know. Sometime in March, we'll let everybody know in a future podcast. But yeah, get those into us as soon as possible. And you can. Oh dear, I was going to say you can enter this as many times as you like, but was it Paul Friday that sent in around about 18 haikus?
So is it a single entry per person?
I think we've got to give them more than that. But
I would say you can enter more than one entry, but put them together. So like one email per person, but you can put as many entries as you want within that email.
Yeah, we're not going to get that overrun, are we?
I know, but remember last time?
I can hear people running to their anagram apps.
Yeah,
already. The
thing is, like last time though, with haikus take a period of time to read out, don't they? Yeah, it doesn't take long to read out 2 words or 3 words in a sentence. So I think we can get through that. We may not read them all out. That's the other side, So we may vet some of them. So there's a competition. Camerograms, based on the rules that we've just said, which I've already forgotten, and email them in to classiclensespodcast@gmail.com. And we'll work out some way about how this is going to get judged. And eventually the winner will get City by the Sea, which is book number 2 by Anil Mistry, An Unusual Eye. So what's Unusual Eye?
So, yeah, it's a weird one. I'm always coming up with... So a few years ago, I was really into... I'm a designer, so I bought a risograph printer. You guys probably don't know what they are. But a risograph printer is... It looks like a photocopier. But the process by which it prints is more like screen print. They're traditionally used by big organizations like prisons or schools to print out shitloads of copies of one thing. But the thing about risograph printers is you buy these drums and you fill them with different colors. So essentially you can put the same piece of paper through the machine again and you get the effect of screen print, but through a machine that looks like a photocopier. So they are very cool, very expensive, and they're a pain in the ass because they're constantly getting dirty and things. But you get lovely things out of them. So I used to have this brand I developed called Super Art Club, through which I sold my risograph prints. But then I started doing more photography. I sold the printer, and I wanted to come up with... it just started off as a Facebook group. So there's a Facebook group called Unusual Eye. The idea was... initially, as every Facebook photography group starts off as, is that it's trying to be about one type of photography. And the whole point of Unusual Eye was it was trying to be about unusual or different photography, nothing cheesy, nothing cliched, blah, blah, blah. But then people get lazy and just chuck everything in. And then you feel like an arsehole if you're trying to say, well, actually, that doesn't follow the guidelines of the group. And it sort of takes all the fun out of it. So, but the brand and those 2 words I sort of really liked. And I thought I'd create an imprint, my own photo book imprint for Unusual Eye, which will, at the moment it's photo books by me, but it may end up as books by other people as well. It may end up as not just photography. It may end up as design, may end up as art and illustration and other things. But it just became a brand under which I could start to sit these books and do stuff with. So it's got this nice sort of 70s British vibe to it. That's the best way I can describe it. Someone said it was very Scarfolk, and if you know Scarfolk, you'll get that. But that's the idea. But the book is sold by Fistful of Books, so don't get confused, people, because I may do a book with Fistful of Books under the Fistful of Books imprint, but Unusual Eye is my imprint, so this is the second book under that imprint. It's all very confusing. Sorry.
Okay, well, that's cleared that one up at least.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
you asked.
Yeah, I did.
Just can't get over the prisons or schools.
Yeah. Very random.
No, but Perry, you'd love it. Check out Risographs. So they're made by Riso Corporation of Japan. They are incredible machines. And
how do you spell it?
RISO, and then the word graph, Risograph. And check out what people are doing with Risograph machines. It's stunning. People are actually doing photo books with them as well.
Okay, I will check that out.
A new rabbit hole for you to jump down.
Okay, then. So from there, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to do some emails, and well, we're just going to do our best. We'll get through as many as we can, so there we go. So I'll head over to Hong Kong and ask Perry to do the duty.
Oh boy! Okay, you ready for this first one?
Mm-hmm.
It's a doozy.
Oh, it might be worth just putting the dates when these emails came in as well. Okay.
Yes, this is from November 26th, or March 4th, 250th, 2020, and it comes to us from Dominic Samol, and the subject line is compatibility questions, Contax RF/Leica M. So Dominic writes, "Hello, Dream Team of Classic Lenses podcast. It's me again, Dominic from Germany. Thanks for reading out a large portion of my email mentioning non-vanilla Pentax lenses. I feel the prices on those already raised some degree. No scientific evaluation done, which might be because those were only mentioned but not written out in the notes. I acquired during the last weeks a Contax RF to Leica M adapter from eBay. It was not one of the usual makes, and it featured rangefinder coupling. Since I'm only starting out in the system and already having some Contax lenses, I thought of this as a handy tool. The maker is an Italian going by the name Zuwil, and there's a link to eBay. With this adapter in my hands, I had to dig deeper into compatibility of lenses between Leica LTM, Leica M, Contax RF, and Nikon S. To most cameras, the biggest obstacle is the length and diameter of the protruding part of the lens, which reaches inside the camera. When looking for a cheap 35mm for my Contax 2A and my Zeiss ZM, I found out the hard way that the old Biogon and the Jupiter 13, I assume he means Jupiter 12, won't work because of length and diameter. It hits an edge inside the body on the Zeiss ZM, the Contax 2A, and will touch the shutter curtains on the Canon 7. Much of this information is available on the internet, but not all in one place, and some is still missing. I do not know about the Nikon S series in that regard, since I sadly do not own one of those. One bummer on the way was that my beloved Scopar SC 25mm with rangefinder coupling will not work with the coupled adapter I have. This is because of how the adapter is made and how the Leica-style cameras gauge for the lens distance to couple with the rangefinder. The adapter has a rotating ring, which engages with the lever. The inner diameter of the ring ends with the inner edge of the lever, but lenses like the Jupiter 12 and sadly also the SC Scopar have a thicker rear diameter and would hit the ring when you want to mount the lens. Tinkering with the ring will not help either, because then the lens will hit the rangefinder lever directly, and if not harming the camera, will at least give false readings. Condensed. 2 tables are needed for successfully buying and adapting. Table 1, Contax and Nikon mount wide-angle lenses with the diameter of their rear assembly. The diameter must be below 30mm to stay safe, below 29mm for the ring. If/when it hits parts inside different cameras depends on the camera. The 29 millimeter measure is for not hitting the rangefinder lever. The second table should be one of cameras which obstruct the space inside because of any reasons. To my knowledge, the Jupiter 12 causes here the most problems, but some others might reach as deep inside the camera and cause similar problems. In this table must be cameras like the ZM, the Contax 2, 3A, I guess many of the TTL metered Leicas as well, and also metered Voigtlander cameras, and also the Canon 7 with its different shutter assembly. Maybe you have some insights in this or can help the community with providing measurements of the rear diameter on said lenses. Keep up the good work. Kind regards, Dominic, Germany, near Stuttgart. Now I breathe.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, over to you, Perry.
Yes.
Wise Perry.
Because
yes, is my response.
Yeah, Perry knows about rangefinders and things like that. I also think there are probably some people thinking we may actually have a rangefinder free show, but no.
I mean, he's asking for a table of compatibility, right? Because I Googled this adapter he's talking about, and it doesn't look that unusual. It looks very, very similar to, the traditional style of Contax to Leica adapter, where it's got the mount ripped from a Kiev or something. And then there's a pretty standard rangefinder coupling arm at the back. And so you're going to encounter the exact same thing with that adapter as you will with an Amadeo or anything else where, as he says, parts of certain lenses may interfere. So in terms of compatibility, you're going to have trouble with a lot of lenses. Like the Jupiter 12, the rear element is so big that it's just going to hit the rangefinder coupling arm. The 35 Biogon, some versions of it, you can kind of get around, although at your own risk, because there's a metal ring that moves back and forth on the back of the lens. And you can actually remove that, and it will then... I don't know if it'll prevent interference with the coupling arm, but it will at least allow the lens to mount on Leica M through adapters. 21 Biogon has a similar issue where there's this crazy rear baffle that's like sort of the shape of a diaper. And you take that off and it can mount, but it probably won't couple because it'll interfere. So, I mean, all of this information is out there, as he says. And I defer to someone else to make that table if they so desire.
I'm sure we've all had problems with trying to mount and not coupling. Anyway. Yeah,
especially when there's a metal ring tied around the shaft.
Okay, let's move on to our next. I was thinking, we haven't got Johnny here. Yeah, you really are stepping into his shoes for us there, aren't you?
I'm talking about Biogons. What are you talking about?
Yeah, both of you. Yes.
Grab your 35. All right. Next one. This one's a short one. And this comes to us November 24th from Philip Crana. And the subject is holiday gift. Hey guys, I have been loving your podcast this year. Want to return the favor and send you a copy or two of my new zine. Please let me know a mailing address and I will put in the mail. Also, check out my Instagram and follow me, please, at dyslexic. That's dyslexic spelt DYSLEXSYK.
Oh, Jesus.
P.S. Just bought a Kodak Extra at a flea market for $75. Nice. Are the lenses really that good, or is this just a rare camera and that is why they are worth so much?
Sorry, how do you spell dyslexic?
It's spelled exactly the way it sounds. DYSLEXSYK.
DYSL
EX
SYK. Do you know actually that one of the most commonly misspelled words is misspelled?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I'm just looking at Dyslexic's page.
Kodak Extra. I think the lenses are kind of cool and unique, but it is also rare, and that's why they're expensive. I think the rarity is more. It's more the rarity than the lenses because they're a pain to mount and a pain to adapt.
And we also need to respond to this. There you go. That's proof that we read these things the first time when they actually get onto the podcast. So there we go. So we will be in touch, Philip. So it's very nice of you to. Well, assuming there are any zines left, we'll gladly have them. So so we'll get in touch with you and drop some postal addresses.
I've just been checking out your Instagram feed. It's very cool. Very nice.
Sweet.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
Moving on. Next email is from Vaughn Bromfield, sent on December 1st. Subject is comments and questions for the experts. Hello. Something for everybody. Simon, in a previous podcast, you boasted that you could create a lens cap for anything if you knew the diameter. The Arecibo telescope is being decommissioned. It will need a cap. Diameter is 350 meters.
I think I need to retract my previous statement.
Perry, my genuine sympathies with the situation in Hong Kong. In Argentina, police were shooting and tear gassing the Diego Maradona mourners. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I figure you'd be thinking, sucks to be them, which might not happen often these days. No, I don't think sucks to be them. Sucks to be tear gassed. But, Maradona deserved a proper send-off. And then this question's for Johnny, but I'll read it anyway. Johnny, while browsing, I think this is the actual question. While browsing for cameras, I found a Leica R4, something body for a cost comparable with a Nikon FE or an OM1 or 2. So I'm thinking, wow, this could be interesting. I start checking Leica R lens prices, availability, and reviews, mainly for 28 millimeters, my favorite, or 35 millimeters. Holy crap. 1, the prices are crazy. 2, reviews were along the lines of, yeah, the Leica R28 2.8 is nice, but my Minolta MD is sharper and a third of the price. In your experience, is this the case that the R lenses offer nothing exceptional other than their price, and the R bodies aren't much either? Love your work. Regards, Vaughn from Sydney, Australia. And then there's a footnote behind under holy crap, which says, I learned recently the difference between vulgar and profane. A vulgarity references bodily functions. Profanity specifically references God. Therefore, holy crap is both vulgar and profane. Thank you for that, Vaughn.
So that's one of the Minolta Leicas, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the problem with it. I always get... I flogged my M7 a while back to buy my Nikon D850, and I do miss the feel of a Leica. And I thought, I'll buy an SLR, but I have the same problem. It's like, as soon as you look at the price of the glass, it's like, oh, Jesus, I'm just going to stay away from this stuff.
We have I don't know if we've talked about Minolta lenses since this email came in. That's at Minolta and Leica R. And I think we were giving a big tick for things like this Summicron 50. Really good lens. I've always wanted to have a go with a Summilux, a Leica R Summilux 50mm lens. Never tried one. Would like to, but I don't get excited about any other Leica R lens.
And there's no reason to. Unless you're one of those people with a boner for an apotelet. We talked about this before, right? It sounds from this email like his main criteria is sharpness anyway. In which case, you're really not going to get that much of a noticeable difference. The Leica R lenses, they feel nice. They're nice lenses, but they are extremely expensive for what you get compared to what else is on the market. That's my opinion of that.
Yeah. I mean, if Johnny was here, I assume he would be saying get an X500 and the Minolta lenses and be a lot happier.
Yeah, I think so. There's nothing really special about Leica R lenses. They're nice. They're really good lenses. But with that money, go get yourself an entire set of contacts.
Yeah,
it's better. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Next email. And just let me know if we're struggling for time, because
we're doing okay at the moment, unless Anil and I get tired, because it's quite late for us. Although
the sun is coming up here, so I can keep going. All right. Next email is from David Ortega. It's a short one. Subject is Rolly-tastic. December 7th, 2020. Hey guys, a short email this time, but your Walla Rolly-tastic episode made me gasp for the Rolly extension hood 2¼ inch by 2¼ inch is it 2¼ inch or 2¼ foot?
That's got to be inches, surely.
Yeah, in original packaging and leather case. On eBay, it was listed as 4 parts, but looked fine, so I shall take the risk. Can't wait to try it out. And that is the weird binocular thing that Johnny was talking about on a previous episode, and it sounds like David Ortega has gone and purchased one. Excellent. So send us a picture of you using it. And we will be amused by that picture because that thing looks ridiculous.
Cool.
Okay, all right, next one. This is from Theo Biddulph, December 9th, 2020. It comes with a cool picture of the Eiffel Tower. And the subject is photography encounters, or where your CLP gas leads you. So Theo says, "Hi guys, I thought I'd give you a little story about how I bought my Rolleiflex. Yes, I finally gave in. I bought myself a Rolleiflex 2.8F planner."
Have we started to say Rolleiflex now? Is that the official Classic Lenses podcast way of saying that? Because I'm sure you didn't say it that way last time we spoke.
Or in the previous email. No, I'm just mixing it up. In the earlier email, I said both Nikon and Nikon. We got to, be inclusive to a global audience.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay, where was I? It's not in perfect shape and has, I think, been heavily used, but everything seems to be working fine. It's a great camera. Weirdly, I seem to find square composition much easier with a TLR than with an SLR. I recently sold my Bronica SQ because I was having trouble with square, but both cameras used a waist level finder, so maybe I'm just hallucinating. You'll notice if you're looking at this email, by the way, there's a but after a semicolon there. You should not put coordinating conjunctions after a semicolon.
You've been told.
Sorry, moving on. So I contacted the seller, asked him a few questions about the camera. He just said to drop by and see if I liked it. I crossed Paris and arrived at his house. We sat outside more than 1 meter apart, looked at the camera. He told me he used to own one of the famous Parisian camera shops. He still had loads of stuff left from those days in his garage, so I asked if I could see. Turns out it wasn't just his garage, but the entire ground floor of his house. Camera equipment everywhere, hundreds of boxes all over the place, labeled Hasselblad ground glass, Nikon F screws, Rollei mirrors. He showed me around. I particularly loved the little lamps repair guys have. He had photography equipment everywhere, collimators, some machine for making sure the Rolly lenses are parallel. It was just incredible. Cameras, Leica memorabilia, camera straps, parts of lenses. After a few minutes talking, he saw I wasn't a threat, and as we walked from one room to another, he shut the open door. Hidden behind the door was a signed Cartier-Bresson that Cartier-Bresson had given him for adapting his point-and-shoot. Behind another door, a famous Doisneau photo of the Eiffel Tower. I found it interesting that the Cartier-Bresson photo was printed, including the borders of the negative, how fashion comes and goes. As we walked past one of the hundreds of boxes, I saw some film and asked if he could give me some. As well as the camera, I walked away with about 15 rolls of expired film, some of it pretty cool, Agfa APX, NPH 400, Ektachrome 64T, Kodak Technical Pan. Sorry for such a long email. Sorry to Perry, who has heard this already on Instagram. If it is too long, just forget about it. But remember, this is your fault after all. You gave me the gas. Keep safe, Theo.
Wow. I've got one here I could read out.
Any reaction to that one? I've heard that story before.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's. I was carried along with that email. You could just imagine that scene as it. I mean, at first when the story started with. I'm selling this camera, and I used to be a camera dealer. I used to have a big shop here. I'm thinking, oh yeah, sure you did. and then they actually took him there, and it's not difficult to imagine that place is just completely packed to the gills, full of camera gear, and it's just one of those experiences you just love to have.
Exactly. So, Anil, did you want to read the next Nikon email?
Yeah. So this one's this is I skipped my homework. So I've got one here by Christopher J. May of Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois. So, gentlemen, let's suppose for a minute that for the entirety of the Classic Lenses podcast, you'd been a Nikon DSLR shooter, and that because of that fact, your eyes glazed over every time that rangefinder lenses were discussed. Let's also assume that you recently added a Nikon Z7 mirrorless to your camera kit and can now adapt a host of delightfully small rangefinder lenses to it, but have no idea what to choose because your eyes had glazed over every time the topic came up previously. Let's finally assume that you're looking for something 50 millimeter-ish, around f2 or so, to adapt to the new camera, but do not have the time or dedication to devote to going through the archive and re-listening to the rangefinder discussions present, because that would take years, maybe decades, since it's a topic that takes up roughly 90% of every show. Zing. Given those parameters, what would you choose to put on your new Z7 to keep it small with sharp but interesting results? Bonus points if you stay under $250 or so. Thanks, guys. And that's Christopher J. May again from Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois.
So he's looking for a rangefinder lens recommendation. For
a sharp f2-ish 50 mil rangefinder lens.
Simon, $250. Over to you, Simon.
Okay. Well, I'm struggling with the f2 stuff because it doesn't need me to say something like a Jupiter 8 because
I was thinking exactly that.
Yeah. So let's put that to one side and the Zeiss Sonar equivalent as well. There's a top core which I'm sure you're going to mention, and I'm really struggling with the actual f2.
Oh,
whereas,
come on, man.
Yeah, no.
Well, he said f2-ish.
Yeah, f2-ish. Whereas, if we can go a little bit faster, so we're not going to go, properly fast lenses. Although Johnny will probably have a issue with me saying such a thing. But the Yashinon 50mm LTM 1.8, if you can find one of those, fantastic lens. I've only taken a few photographs with mine and it's out on loan, but every time I've attached it to my Sony, it's just made me smile. As anybody's listened to me before, that's usually a sign of a good lens, that you just immediately know this is good. So I would recommend that. I've actually picked up this week a Canon 50mm 1.8 LTM, which I'm really interested in trying, and I can't wait to actually get both the Yashinon and the Canon together, because they're quite similar lenses. I think they
look similar on the exterior, but the Yashinon is way more interesting.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to trying those two. But other than that, I can't remember that top core which you're about to mention. So I'm just I'll hand over to the rangefinder department now.
Yeah, you got a lot of choices. The $250 or so budget is going to make it a little tough. So apologies for. The Yashinon you're not going to find for that cheap, for one thing. So Simon's suggestion is out already. Canon 51.8 is definitely a good choice. There is the top core 5cm f2, which is probably my favorite 50mm lens. It is not that expensive for what you get from it. Biotar design, super wonderful handling. There's also the Nikkor, if you want to stay, brand loyal as a Nikon guy. Nikkor 5cm f2 is a sonar variant. It's not that expensive, and it's really cool because it has Nikon's close focus feature, which is useless on a rangefinder, but potentially very nice on something like a Z7, where basically you can focus the lens closer than minimum coupling distance. And that lens is cool, all metal, well built as well. So, those are the ones that come to mind immediately. There are loads of others. But Yeah.
I've got a suggestion. You'll all roll your eyes, but you said in your email interesting results. So I've got the Industar 50 2. It's a 50 mil 3.5. Well, it's fast enough. You've got a Z2. You've got a Z camera there. Fast smashed. It's it's a great lens. I stick it on my D850 and it looks ridiculous, but you can get some really, really genuinely interesting results.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of interesting results, if you are looking for something a little bit different, I can wholeheartedly recommend the Chiyoko Rocors, either the 45 2.8, which is my preferred one, or the 50 millimeter f2. That lens is a little larger than the other options, but the cool thing about that was it was designed originally for the Minolta A, where the negative was slightly smaller than a normal 35 millimeter negative. So instead of 36 by 24, I think it was 34 by 24. And so as a result, the image circle is slightly smaller. It still covers full frame, no problem. You get a little bit more of the edge aberrations, a little bit of swirl. And that's a really nice lens. And if you can find the uncoated or single coated 5 centimeter f2 Chiyoko, it's really nice. It's got a very unique low contrast look, and I adore it. And I need to use that lens again because I forgot it existed. I
just thought of another one. But I mean, this is really left field, and that would be if you could get a rehoused Voigtlander Ultron from a folding camera. That'd be pretty cool, I would have thought.
Well, I mean, are we just suggesting random 50 millimeter f2 lenses now? Because that's where we're going.
Not really. It's more something that's interesting, and I think that's classed as interesting, surely. Although whether or not you can get one that's rehoused in that kind of budget or not, it's another matter.
Yes, but if you're looking at that kind of lens, in addition to the Ultron, you should also look at the Schneider Xenon and the Rodenstock Elagon. Because especially the Rodenstock Elagon 50 millimeter f2 off the retinas is just, that lens is mind blowing. It's so good, and I want more copies of that lens, but they're all on retinas, and so adapting them is kind of annoying. But that lens is just amazing, and I'm gonna use it. Yeah.
Cool. That was good.
Cool. All right, there's rangefinder talk for the day.
Yeah.
There's only a couple left. We're being very efficient here.
We are. Let's go for it. Let's see if we can do them all.
Let's do it. This is from Tagizade Atabak. December 28th, 2020. Subject: Happy New Year. Hi, Kings of Gas. Thank you for your great entertaining podcast. My favorite by far. My first question is, how do you guys fight with your gas? I'm buying and selling gear to cover my photography expenses, but selling is not as easy as buying. I cannot fight with my gas for keeping the gear that I'm buying to sell. The second question, I have a few SLR collections, but I want to make my collection smaller and focus on one or two systems. I have Canon FD, Nikon, Olympus, Minolta, Kodak DKL, Pentax, Fujica, and Johnny mentioned a few times that you had a Minolta X700 and Olympus OM2N, but now your main SLR gear collection is OM mount, and they're really great. How did you end up with OM mount? Obviously, Johnny is not here to answer that. I really want to make space in my cabinet, but it's not easy to choose between these systems. Please give me some pointers. How can I choose between these cameras? Thank you, guys. Hope you have a great year. Cheers, Atabak. So, how do you fight with your gas, and what would you keep one or two systems out of that chunk?
Gas tends to look after itself when you run out of money.
Yeah, I know that feeling very well.
Yeah. Or I haven't bought anything since October, so my gas is totally under control. But I wouldn't recommend my method of fighting. Just don't fight it. Like, the underlying assumption is you have to fight the gas, but let the gas sweep over you. You know, and you will discover powers that some people consider to be unnatural. Yeah.
There is something about when you get an attack of gas and you feel like you need that lens or that camera or something like that, and then just try and let time go by a little bit, and it does. You know, that gas does soften, doesn't it? Quite often, not always. There's sometimes where you still need to do it. I mean, I still need a Rolleiflex 2.8 of some description. But
you do. They're really good.
Yeah. I had an experience of sort of offset gas, which is when you have gas for something and then you can't afford it and you buy something else and you're disappointed. And so late last year, I'd had a few whiskeys and I was lying in bed just trying to go to sleep, but just staring at eBay and thinking, I sold my M7, but I still want an M6. And I nearly pulled the trigger on it and didn't. And then the next morning, I saw some posts from you, Simon, and it was mentioning some lens. And I tried to ask you about it, and you didn't reply properly. And I don't know what the hell I bought, but it was, let's say, a lot cheaper than a Leica M7.
Oh, is that when you went and bought the wrong Ricoh?
Yes, that's right. It's an XR Reconon 50mm L. I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's sat on my Pentax and it cost me about 40 quid. But that's all the gas I can afford at the moment.
That much?
Yeah. Oh, God. That's a lot for that lens.
It's a
and you bought the wrong version.
Yeah.
It's very clean.
Yeah. So listeners, don't do what Anil did and don't buy the version. Ever. Don't buy the version with the L on it, because apparently, according to Simon, that version sucks.
But I found a post online saying the L version was the right version.
Yeah, well,
whatever the right version is, you've never clarified this, Simon.
Yeah, that's right. I haven't. No.
Stop being mysterious. Tell us.
It's just the right one. So you'll get there.
There you go.
You'll see. Glad to help you on that one.
Well, a lot cheaper and a lot more disappointing than a Leica M6. There we go.
Yeah, well, it's the cut price Summicron. That's the Ricoh we were talking about out there. And lots of people have gone out and bought that lens, and everybody's been happy with it as well. So
except for the ones who bought the wrong one.
Yeah, well, the really wrong one is the P. Is it the P? Yeah, the Reconon P. Don't buy that unless you're going to use it on a Reconon. Otherwise, it will potentially break your camera. Other than that, you're fine. You're okay. With a P1, you can put it onto you can adapt it to your mirrorless camera, no problem at all. But don't put it onto a regular Pentax, because it's got an extra pin and it'll get stuck, and that's not good. So
the camera systems,
yeah. Which one to get rid of? I mean, the problem is, like, you say, well, get rid of the Canon FD. That sound like a really easy thing to say. But there are some. Well, okay, I'm going to have to justify it now. There are some good Canon FD cameras, namely the F1, a T90. I really like the T90. If you can get one that works. But more to the point, there's some absolutely fantastic FD lenses. Yes, there's some crap. But there's some brilliant FD lenses. The 135 f2, incredible lens, absolutely brilliant. And there are others. Yeah, just the regular non-EF 50mm 1.4. Every one from the FL all the way through to the FDNs. Great lens, absolutely great lens. There's which is as good as anything else out there. Nikon, do you want to chip into that one? Do you, Anil?
Yeah, well, you've got to keep Nikon.
Yeah, I think it's an easy one to say, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, it's a numbers game, isn't it? I mean, there's so much Nikon glass out there over the years, and some of it is stunning, and it's readily available. It never goes crazy in price. And I've had, I'll tell you something, just because I went through phases over the years of buying shitloads of cameras and glass and buying and selling and trying different things, but I at the end of the day, it weirdly, it almost doesn't matter what. At the end of the day, it comes down to what you're shooting. If you think of photography, classic lenses, there's a classic lenses bit and the photography bit, and I'm all about the photography bit. It almost doesn't matter. And frankly, when I look through photographs I've taken with X, Y, and Z camera, I can't tell what I've shot with what. I really can't. It's very, unless you're going to the crazy bokeh or whatever, or this, that, and the other. Most lenses are pretty damn decent, and if you're, for me, my view is if you're buying into photography and film photography, it's not cheap. So buy into a system where things are readily available and of good quality. And there's so much, for every focal distance, there's great and shit Nikon lenses, but there's lots of things in between. So you can always find something that is really good. That's my view.
But I mean, you also have to consider that you can adapt Nikon lenses to pretty much anything as well. So I think the argument for Canon FD, to sort of reluctantly back up what Simon is saying, is it's not that easy to adapt Canon FD to other mounts. So if you want to use those lenses, then there's an argument there. For the rest, I think just find which camera you enjoy using the most, which one feels best in your hand, and which one you have the easiest time focusing as an SLR, and then just go with that, because you can always adapt. Like DKL, no, absolutely not, right? That those cameras are dumb, but the lenses are cool, and unless you really love those lenses, there's no reason to keep that. The rest, I think there's an argument for all of them. I like Nikon SLRs. I really like Olympus SLRs.
Fujica?
Well, I assume he's talking about the specific Fujica mount, right? The X mount, and not like an M42 one. No, that one's not versatile enough.
Yeah, I think that's the weak link in there for me, at least. Anyway, but I mean, I'm just going to say we've got Canon FD, Nikon, Olympus, Minolta, Kodak DKL, Pentax, Fujica. Which one you should get rid of, and all this kind of stuff. Well, I've just got to say there isn't a Contax.
I was about to.
There's no M42 body either.
Yeah, well, that doesn't matter. Because you can just use those lenses on so many things. But Contax SLR, that's really, you can just get rid of all the others and just get the Contax SLR and have a nice Carl's
Zeiss glass at a great price,
and adapt quite a few other systems lenses to it as well. And if you have a Contax AX, you can make them autofocus if you really want to as well.
But the flip side of that is you can adapt CY lenses to most of those mounts because the flange is quite long. So
not to Nikon, if I can remember. I think I tried. Yeah, but I asked. Yeah.
Yeah, because Nikon they're dumb, right? They made their flange distance longer than everyone except Leica R.
Yeah, I think so. You can put DKL onto Nikon as well, just about.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you really want to.
If you really, really wanted to. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there's no right answer there, right? But get rid of Fujica, probably get rid of DKL, and then pick your poison from the rest. If it were me, I would go probably Nikon and Olympus. But that's because I like those systems. Anil, did you ever end up getting the 55 1.2, by the way?
Which one? For what? Which camera? The Nikon? No, I've got the. Okay. I've got a.
I know the 50.
I've got a. Is it a 55 2.8? The macro.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Which is a lovely lens, but no, I never bothered because I've got the 51.2, and that kind of did the job for me. But in terms of lens feel, the best feeling lens I've ever had, and just overall quality is the Contax. 51.4 planar. It's just absolutely, it's so classy. It just feels wonderful in the hand. It's just absolutely beautiful. But then on saying that, I also love Pentax lenses. I love my ME suit. It's weird. You have different cameras, and that's the problem. It's, my favorite camera of all time is a Nikon FM3A film camera. Mm-hmm. But my favorite camera to hold and to just use is the Pentax ME Super, just with a 51.7 on it. It's just, there's something about it feels really instinctive. Everything just feels really right. My favorite camera, just because I want one again, for tactile sensation, is probably a Leica M6. The shutter sound and that, there's something special. I think that's what Leica do really well. But at the end of the day, again, it almost doesn't matter. It's what you do with the thing at the end of the day that's going to give you. But for me, yeah, Nikon. I mean, look at it from a sense of how many lenses are out there, and if you want to carry on shooting and getting lenses and building a collection of things without breaking the bank, there's a shitload of Nikon lenses out there.
Yeah, I don't think we've helped Ataback in any shape or form there, which I think we've probably done exactly what he wanted us to do. So go out and buy more things. It's fine. Exactly. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. All right, moving on. Next email is from Bernard Sperling, January 17th. So we're getting there. 2021 now. Subject, hooray. And Bernard says, the podcast is back, and it is here to stay. Thank you all for the latest installment. Having a digital break is in itself not a bad idea. For example, Bytham takes them regularly. However, they are announced in advance. So the herd is not spooked. I was really worried by the ominous silence. And one needs to consider the circumstances you mentioned in the latest podcast. Silence could mean anything from a well-deserved break or something worse. I think he thought we were dead. I tried to coax a reaction by a super artistic, black and white, contemporary shot on mirrorless with a classic lens, handheld in one take. No expense spared. Did not have any, but still did not spare them. Well scripted. Had to think about it between lunch and afternoon nap. Under great effort. Took at least 10 minutes shooting and 20 minutes editing. Short adaptation of Joseph Conrad's epic novel Heart of Darkness. Or if you want, it's much too long film version from Last Millennium Apocalypse Now. Agreed. Please watch it full with sound. Then the written self-dialogue will fall into place. Look forward to the next podcast. P.S. I'm always up to any challenge, but 2 points keep me from entering the Malort challenge. First, logistics. I do not think there is any this side of the pond. And second, I think it's in Germany and they have better sense than that. Second, being the winner of the Konica 40, I found it fair to let someone else step forward to take the prize, even though I am lusting after the legendary Raynox. I guess I wait a few more months for someone to come forward before revisiting logistics. Best regards to all of you. Keep safe and healthy. Bernard.
Thank you very much. And I still need to go back and listen to that with the sound on, because it's there's something I don't know. It reminded me of like something that David Lynch might have done. So we need to go back and listen to that. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, we did mention that last time. It's I mean he definitely thought we were dead.
Yeah.
But don't worry, Bernard. It was just a Christmas New Year breather.
Yes.
Okay, I think we have 3 more, but just want to check with you guys on your energy levels on this fine British evening.
I think we're doing okay, and I think it also just be worth noting that there is an email which we're not going to do this week, largely because it's a customer complaint about Johnny. So that one can wait for when Johnny's around. So what's the next one?
All right, this one, January 18th from John Chabalco. I hope I got that right. Subject, classic lenses on digital cameras. Hi there. I just started listening to your podcast a few months ago. I just finished the most recent one on digital cameras with classic lenses. While you guys talked about it a bit, you didn't go too deep on using digital cameras with manual focus lenses. Specifically, which cameras worked well with them, what the workflow was like, and all that. When the first generation Sony A7 cameras came out, I went and bought one, A7R specifically, to use with my Leica lenses, and it was a confounding mess. It was my first EVF camera, but it was also so slow to use with the flipping between magnification modes to focus. Then back for framing, and then choosing the right magnification space to use, etc. And the focus peaking stripes were rarely of use in the full frame mode. I sold that thing at some point, maybe a year after getting it, switched to Fuji X, and I love it, but the crop factor is a drag for my full frame lenses. And I've got a few Fuji lenses which I like, so I don't use manual focus lenses much at all. That was 4 to 5 years ago now. I've been paying attention to the space, and I'm really interested in if there are good new digital bodies out there that make using manual lenses viable. The latest generation of Sony full frame, including the A7C, Canon and Nikon mirrorless bodies, I want to hear how focus actually works, if it's a struggle or not in good light and bad, wide open, closed down. And I'm interested in how they handle EXIF info with multiple lenses. That always seems to have been a bit of an afterthought. You guys touched on some of this in the podcast, but not with any hands-on experience on the new cameras. I rotate through a few film cameras in my Fuji Digital. I'd love to give it another shot with the current full-frame mirrorless body, but I want to avoid getting burned again like I did with that A7R. Cheers, John.
That's an interesting one because you start to get into the way that different interfaces work, and way that these digital cameras handle manual lenses. My initial thought is, okay, if you don't, you actually want to buy something and splurge a few hundred or maybe a few thousand on a new camera, maybe it's actually worth, well, you can't go into a store at the moment, but actually going into a store and trying them all out with one of your favorite manual lenses and seeing what the experience is like, or even just renting a camera out for a few days. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do that, and actually just giving it a bit of time so you're not under pressure in a store, because it is a big deal because everyone shoots differently. And that experience, and it's one of the things that worries me. I know at some point I may have to go mirrorless or buy a mirrorless second camera to use with my manual lenses, but I can't stand it.
Are you saying you didn't buy a Fuji after our last episode with you?
Well, no, I'll tell you the problem, Perry. I'm now thinking Fuji medium format.
Nice.
I mean that's where I'm sort of looking now. I have my main cameras are D850 and a D750. The D750 is almost dead. I mean the shutter starts to lock up when I fire it up now. I've absolutely killed it. But at some point, I'm thinking, do I have to go Nikon mirrorless, or do I go big? And the idea of going big, because the prices are coming down, if you can call that a low price, it is getting interesting. So that may be something that happens. But I mean, it is a challenge, because if you're used to shooting a certain way, and then it comes down, for me, it comes down to the interface, what stands between you and the way each company have set up their software, and the way that, whether it's the focus peaking or whatever, works between your manual lens and what you actually shoot. And, so maybe try them out, or maybe even rent it out for a few days.
Yeah, the only problem you're going to have with renting is that if it's there to be used with manual focus lenses, is you're going to have some adapters.
The adapters, yeah.
So beg, borrow, steal is the bit you'd have to do with on that one. Which would you buy an adapter just for a test drive? I don't know.
And then I suppose you get into the whole thing about you can get adapters that autofocus, right? Manual lenses. So there's that whole world there in between. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's make the assumption that we're not really talking about the autofocus stuff. Just going back to where they started, because you had the first generation A7 and A7R, and when I first got going, I was using an Olympus EM1, and I was very, very happy with that for 18 months or so. And it was actually, I think, for shooting manual lenses, it actually gave a really good experience as well, because it was easy to use if you just customize the buttons. Actually, people moan about Sony menus, but my word, you go into an Olympus menu and it's you've got so many things you can do with it, it becomes completely overwhelming. But once you've actually worked out how to do your custom buttons, I found that the Olympus was excellent for shooting manual focus lenses. But my favourite function of the Olympus was the fact that you could leave voice recordings on each photograph that you'd actually took. So, and this at the time is what I'll be doing. Because I'd go out with a bag of lenses, and you get some people will take a photograph of the lens that they used, and they'll make notes or whatever. I couldn't be doing with any of that. But what I could do is just make a voice note on each photograph, and it was just so easy to do. And it kills me that Sony don't do that, because I'm still using an A7 Mark II, which I think I mentioned last week. And I bought that in about 2015. No intention of changing it. I really dislike Fuji cameras because that stupid shutter speed dial on the top of them. I know that plenty of people have a different view on that point, but I think it's just a complete waste of space, because I'm an aperture priority shooter. It goes into A if it has that dial, and then I've got a dial that does nothing. Whereas anyway, I can go off on that one for a while, which is the good thing, of course, about the medium format Fujis. Because they don't have the stupid shutter speed dial. They got rid of it for those, so that's a big tick in that box.
But doesn't he mention full frame? So as opposed to micro four thirds?
And that was the thing. So
he already has a Fuji.
Yeah, so coming back onto Sony, which I've as mentioned last week, I've had no real desire, strong desire at least, to change up from my A7 II, and if I did, it'd probably be to an A7 IIR that Perry has. But the thing is that people moan about menus and stuff like that, but for me, it's about once you've configured your camera, just as the way I was saying about with the Olympus, my Sony is configured for manual focus lenses, that I have buttons that take me straight to magnification. I have a button that will immediately change the stability, the IBIS. I have a button that will go to the things that I want it to do. And I find that just it's incredibly intuitive. Now, you didn't like the Sony, so you probably wouldn't. Why would you like another Sony? I don't know, but it's that thing about getting to know your camera and getting over Fuji and stuff like that.
So does that leave Nikon and Canon?
Well, it's an interesting one with Nikon and Canon. I mean, I don't think I'd go with the Canon, but largely because this. If you're going to spend that kind of money, I want as good a sensor as you can get, and for me, Canon sensors are a bit iffy. But the Nikons are using Sony sensors. I would seriously consider a Z7. If I was in the market for a new camera, I would very seriously consider it. I've held one, I've looked at it. It's got a good EVF, which I think is a really important thing with a digital camera. I don't know if he does voice notes. If he does voice notes, that could take me over the edge, But I'm not a Sony fanboy or anything. I don't own a Sony lens, So I'll be quite happy to go with whichever one works the best for me.
Simon, I like that you're defending Sony here without any prompt whatsoever. But okay, a couple things, right? Number one, the Fuji GFX 50S and 50R both have shutter speed dials. So I don't know what you're talking about with the lack of a shutter speed dial.
It's the new one that's just come out.
Oh, the 100S. That is sweet. That is sweet.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good camera.
So they've done it right now. That's good.
So that aside, I think. I mean, it's tricky here, right? I personally find that the Fuji crop factor doesn't bother me that much. And in my experience, they have the best focus peaking. Or like the X Pro 2 and X Pro 3 do give you that nice hybrid if you have the little sort of viewfinder in the viewfinder, which I quite like. But I think you're kind of overlooking something here where, John, you're talking mostly about using Leica lenses on a Sony A7. If that's the case, and if the EVF bothers you, the obvious answer to me is an M10. Because apart from the price, I mean, you get rangefinder coupling, you get a really nice viewfinder, you have much better implemented live view and a high quality external viewfinder if you want it. There's a Leica SL2 as well, but I wouldn't recommend that. So, I mean, from what you're describing and what bothers you about mirrorless cameras, I would probably go, if I were you, and if you can afford it, look at an M10. Other than that, I mean, I don't have any experience with the Canon and Nikon body, so I don't know how good their focus peaking or focus assist is. But much like Simon, I have my Sony set up in a way that doesn't really bother me, and I find it's okay, for focusing. I just think it's easier on a Fuji. So, yeah, I mean, I think Simon's right. See what works for you, and sort of what Anil was saying. I don't know if there's a lockdown where you are, but if you can go and try them out, even if you don't bring a manual lens with you, the kind of native kit lenses that you can test, you can put them in manual focus mode, right, and just sort of see what the assist experience is like.
So has the M10 got a decent EVF in it?
Well, there's an external EVF on the M10, which is much better than the terrible one on the M240.
That sort of worries me that you said that, because I mean, I tried. I'm not sure which one Hamish has got, Hamish Gill, but he's got one with an external EVF, and yeah. I had to put the thing down because it was, I needed to take a photograph in this, and I just get handed this Leica with this external EVF, and I was thinking, this is appalling. Yeah, the actual quality of the
it's not a great experience,
and it destroyed my whole interest in that beautiful feeling camera. And I was thinking, well, just give me a normal camera. I know how this works. I know how to focus it properly.
Yeah, well, no, but that's what I was saying. It's if he's primarily using Leica lenses anyway, and he wants to adapt them. The reason M10 jumps out to me is because you don't have to use the EVF; just use the damn rangefinder, right? But obviously, price is the primary issue there. But if you hate EVFs, honestly, like if you can afford it, an M10 sounds like the way to go.
The other thing, it was a relatively early EVF, although I think it's actually the same as the EVF that's in my camera. EVFs have come on a huge amount since then, and there's also which we've not mentioned it at all, and that's the Panasonic and Leica L series cameras. Were
you not listening when I said the Leica SL2?
Oh, okay, then the Panasonic one then. Who cares about that one? It's an irrelevance anyway. So the Panasonics, I mean the EVFs in those, I tried one probably about 18 months ago, and I was knocked out by just how good it was. It just made mine feel really clunky in the Sony. I had to move away from it quickly because I was thinking I can't use my Sony again if I keep on looking through this EVF. It was that much better.
They're huge though, those cameras.
Yeah, enormous, and that's a real problem. But yeah,
that's the S1R, right?
Yeah. Lovely camera, just unnecessarily massive in my opinion.
Yeah.
See, I disagree there because my problem with mirrorless, I know mirrorless is kind of taking over, and there's lots of benefits. Is that by this time you've sort of added all your lenses and things, they become really front heavy. And out of all of the ones I've seen, the S1R just feels the most substantial and sort of balanced, if that makes sense.
So you have held that camera?
Yeah.
Right, I remember it was at the photography show a couple of years ago, and people saying, "Have you felt the Panasonic?" And I was thinking, they were saying, "Oh, it's really big, it's really heavy." And I was thinking, "Yeah, but I like a camera with a bit of heft." I always have. I don't actually use it anymore, but I always used to use a grip. I've got a grip for my Sony, so I was thinking, I want a decent sized one and all this kind of stuff, so to speak. And then I went over there and I picked the thing up and I thought, oh, this really is big and heavy, and it was just too much.
But I just, it's weird, this obsession with miniaturization. It just annoys me because you end up with cameras with shitty battery life. They overheat like crazy. They're really flimsy, and by the time you put good glass on them, they're really front heavy. I really don't get it. It's like,
but that's fine. But that camera, it reminds me of one of those Scamera things where they put a bit of lead weight at the bottom of them, to make it feel
with
heavy.
A color lens.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing. They're made by the same people, I'm sure.
I love a camera with heft. It's just you fire the shutter. It's like some of these cameras I've tried some of the Sonys, and you fire the shutter, you move the camera. It just really annoys me. You need a bit of damping and just a bit of mass in the camera.
Yeah, that makes sense. But again, this email, this dude is using Leica lenses, right? So if you're using rangefinder lenses, you put them on a body the size of an S1, that's going to be ridiculous because it has the opposite problem. So I agree. Like in my opinion, the thickness of the camera and the length of the lens, the closer they are to equivalent, the more the better.
Yeah.
So because that to me is what a perfectly balanced camera feels like, right? But yeah, again, I mean, if he's using Leica lenses, especially with the question at the end about EXIF, like M10 handles EXIF pretty nicely if you're using mostly Leica lenses because you just select the lens, and yeah, it's obvious, man. You need I'm more and more convinced you need an M10, John.
It's probably not the answer you wanted. Start saving up.
Oh, Anil, by the way, if you like big chunky cameras, you gotta get yourself one of these.
I actually, annoyingly, I nearly bought one last year, and then beginning of last year, and the prices have just shot up now. So,
have they?
Yeah. Yeah, they've gone crazy.
Wait, like what kind of ballpark?
Well,
Sorry, this is
going to say, for the benefit of our listeners.
Topcon RE. Yeah. Or was it a Super D I was looking at, I think?
They're the same thing. Super D and RE Super.
Yeah.
Everything.
I don't know what's happening in the UK. Well, obviously it's the B word, Brexit, but just workaday cameras, point and shoots, everything has shot up. I've realized that I've got drawers and drawers behind me of cameras, all these point and shoots, and they're worth daft money now. It's gone crazy because what's happening now is people don't want to ship. There's a big confusion about shipping, about the costs at the receiver's end of VAT, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so, in essence, what I've gathered is to buy a camera. It kind of makes sense to, if you're in the UK, for example, just to buy it from the UK. If you're buying from anywhere else, there's going to be hidden charges. So in the same way, if you're in the UK, you buy a camera from Japan, there's 20% added generally when you at this end. And I think that's happening with everywhere now. So everywhere is Japan. So everything is top mint now. Top mint plus.
That's a shame because I know Simon doesn't like this camera.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and it has the nicest feeling advance lever of any SLR.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's like it's M3 like. This is
it looks very like it. Yeah,
it's gorgeous. So anyway, it's a little recommendation of heft. All right,
can't be heft.
Two more. The next one is quite short. This is from Aaron Alfano, January 25th. Subject: assembly/disassembly of Pentax Takumar lenses. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I hope this email finds you well. I've assembled a nice set of Pentax M42 mount lenses, including all the ones Johnny recommended on a recent episode: 28 3.5, 35 3.5, 50 1.4, and 105 2.8. Unfortunately, I bought the 35 sight unseen and did not examine it closely enough to return it in time. Shame on me. Turns out the lens is filthy inside. Tons of dust and what appears to be fine hairs. Yuck. I've asked a couple of well-known Pentax repair shops for a quote to clean and repair this lens, though the cost is far more than the cost of just buying a cleaner copy of the lens. I was wondering if you could point me to any sources for instructions on disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling this particular lens. I would be grateful for any help you can provide, as I really like the tiny size and lightweight of the lens and would like to get it back into service. Thanks again for your great podcast. Best, Aaron Alfano. So, dude, the tiny hairs, fine hairs, that sounds like fungus, first of all. Right?
Yeah. That was.
I mean, that's my assumption.
Yeah. Unless they're tiny hairs, of course. Like tiny dusts.
But I've never seen a lens with multiple hairs in it to constitute a problem. I've seen hair in a lens, but it's usually a singular hair. Man, that's a tricky one. I don't know how to disassemble a 35 3.5. But my inclination is if it's not affecting the image quality, then just leave it. Especially if it's the inner elements, give the outer elements a good clean. If you really don't care about the lens, I guess you could sort of try to take it apart and remove the rear element. I do that all the time. Like I take out the front and rear groups to clean them. But if you're going in between elements, you need a service guide to do that, or just live with it. It probably won't be that bad.
Yeah, I've got nothing specific really. I pretty much agree with what you've just said there.
Yeah. Plus, there are. I have lenses that are in awful condition as well, and sort of unsalvageable. And actually, sometimes it's fun to use them. So what I would say, because they can give you like a low contrast look, they can give you interesting flare effects. I would say if it's unsalvageable, number one, try to ascertain whether or not it actually makes a difference to the image. And if it does make a difference to the image, and you really like that lens, I would just buy another one because it's a pretty cheap lens anyway. So you can have the kind of crappy one for special effects and then the nice one for normal shooting, because it's going to be cheaper than getting it repaired.
Yeah.
And if you try to fix it yourself, you'll probably destroy it. Okay. The final email I think I'm going to hand over to Anil to read.
Yeah, this email is from me. It was sent on Tuesday, December the 22nd. And if I recall, I was walking back from Brighton, having had a few nips of Jameson whiskey in my camera bag. So here we go. As we near the end of the clusterfuck that has been 2020, I'm driven to reflect upon the past 12 months. As I write this email, yes, I'm walking the streets of Brighton, listening to the three of you talking all things camera, interspersed with random nonsense. Your podcast has become a big part of my life this year, keeping my mind occupied as I wander the streets with a camera, trying to avoid thinking too hard about things. I've shot a lot less film this year because it's so expensive, and also because I've been focusing my efforts on getting more professional commissions. So the DSLRs have taken prominence over the film cameras. Though I have made a few random camera and lens purchases following your conversations. In particular, I've enjoyed using the Konica Auto Reflex, which Johnny has waffled on about in the past. It's a beautiful, shiny, heavy beast. I would just like to say thank you for helping me stay sane and entertained this year, and wish you all a happy Christmas. Keep up the fantastic work. Yours shootingly, Anil Mistry. Kissy kiss. Yeah, that was a little heartfelt moment. You three guys have just such a great sort of dynamic between you, and it's always been really enjoyable just to listen to you talk about lenses at such a deep level, where partly my eyes glaze over, but at the same time it's done in such an entertaining way, and such an insightful and educated way that it's always great to listen to. So thank you, fellas. Much appreciated.
You sure you've been listening to the right podcast?
Yeah. Yeah. It's usually when Perry and Johnny kick off, and then Simon gets stuck on a particular point and won't move. It's very entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that, Anil. And I think, before we get into the half frame stuff, the thing that jumps out for me here is like the reflecting on 2020.
Yeah.
And one thing I was thinking about the other day is to me, one of the things that makes 2020 particularly strange and perhaps distressing is there was this inherent tension throughout the year where it felt like a lot of stuff was going on in the world, but in our own individual lives, like jack shit is happening because we're all sitting at home trying not to die. And so, I think a lot of us sort of turned to immersing ourselves in the happenings of the world around us, of which we have no direct participation because we're staying at home. We're going out in masks when we do go out. And unfortunately, the world around was kind of shitty last year too. And so that inherent tension of like individual nothingness and excessive immersion in the external, primarily internet-driven world, for me at least, was like a massive source of tension. And I'm hoping this year, a sense of normality, whether we ever get it, is less of that looking outwards on things you can't control, and more of a just like, how can I use my own time and my own life that's sort of blurring into this March 2020 flood of time in a more maybe productive and adaptive way.
Yeah, there was a really famous phrase, the banality of evil. How the sickest, darkest people on the throughout history have also been incredibly boring. And I sort of thought of the banality of fear. Last year was so weird, and so is this year. But as you said, there was really major shit going down, and no one knows where it's going to go. On so many levels. We were all stuck at home, and yet we were all just baking bread or doing just dumb shit and whatever everyone was doing in every country. So one of the projects I was working on for another client, I started working in virtual events and developing virtual events for people like Twitter and sort of other brands like that. And I was working for Twitter Singapore. And apparently a big thing there was, over in the UK, it was all about baking sourdough bread. Over in Singapore, it was about making a particular kind of noodle dish. But everyone had their little bit of banality locally. But the hardest thing was just to try and keep yourself occupied. And for personally, the challenge I found was to keep shooting and to keep busy. And it almost became, in a way, a form of automatic exercise, as opposed to thinking, I really feel like shooting. Because frankly, every morning I woke up, I didn't feel like doing anything. I just felt like thinking, what the fuck is going on? I've got no money coming in. What the hell is going on with the world? So you just had to, frankly, just keep yourself occupied. And I just had to, essentially, that's why I just started, and I'm doing it now. I walk a lot, and I just keep myself physically engaged. And sometimes just shoot on almost automatic, just take a camera for something to do and to keep my mind occupied and look through that viewfinder. But it's become, a form of therapy for me. And yes, it's creative. And sometimes I'll spend a day with a camera and not shoot a single thing, but I've got the camera with me. And it's just like this little friend there. So photography has taken on a more therapeutic sort of meaning beyond the artistic thing and the financial thing. It's become a deeper and more important thing in my life. So it's been a very, very strange time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting because it is important to find, a way to keep yourself occupied. And for me, it's been the opposite. I always carry a camera around, and I just really haven't been shooting recently. For various reasons. But, there's a time for doing, there's a time for idleness, but like doing begets more doing and idleness begets more idleness.
Yeah.
So I think in these times, it's particularly easy to get sunk into one or the other. And I think on the one hand, there is a certain toxicity about expecting people to stay, as productive and as busy when there's this sort of chaotic pandemic going on where a little bit of downtime, family time for reflection is actually, I think, quite healthy. But on the flip side, if you let yourself spiral into idleness, then, it just everything becomes a constant stream of nothingness, right? And you don't want that.
Well, I was stuck in a house with my two sons who are now 21 and 18. And they just sat there really not wanting to be at home, and so everything was really tense. They were bored shitless and pretending to be, taking part in all the things we were trying to do and stay entertained. We got into a board game called Catan, which is sort of we started playing that. Then we started mixing Catan with poker and creating poker-related levels to Catan, and everything got ridiculous. And frankly, everyone just wanted to be somewhere else. So it was just a nice distraction to get away with the camera, whether I was using it or not, and just do something else. But just to hear other people, talking about stuff. And I think that's what your podcast did for me anyway. It just made things feel that there was a sense of normality and people still doing stuff and talking about their passions and not being affected by what was going on in the world. And I think, most people found their interest somewhere like that in a way that they could carry on doing their thing. But I've even now, if I just avoid thinking too deeply on anything, just carry on, just push through basically, and carry on. It's too much to take on, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I did get a nice camera out of it, thanks to Johnny. So, should I tell you about my Konica Auto Reflex?
Yeah.
So Johnny's gone on about it. Again, the reason I bought this camera was also an economic reason. I still wanted to carry on shooting film, and I love half-frame cameras. So I have I have a half-frame point and shoot. I've got an Olympus Pen EE2. I have this tiny little plastic Russian thing that I still haven't been able to load for over 3 years, and it sits there in a drawer, and it looks really cool. I've forgotten the name of it, but I'm going to find it. Hang on.
The SNEMA cameras or something.
It's called the tiny Russian plastic bastard. I think I called it. Oh, it'll come to me in a minute anyway. But no. So Johnny was going on about the Konica Auto Reflex, and I've looked at a few Olympus pens in the past, but they're very hard to find now in good condition. They're getting, they're filled with fungus and they're in really, really shitty condition.
Yes.
Generally, they're all available from Japan. Japan is very humid and they're just full of crap. So I've stayed away. But Johnny mentioned the Konica Auto Reflex, which is essentially, it's a full-size SLR, but there's a lovely switch, big fat switch, where you can switch from full to half frame. And these little blinds come in over the film plane. to change it, and you can actually change between full and half frame mid-roll as well. And one turned up just at the end of last year from a UK-based seller, and I bought one, and it's gorgeous. I think I wrote a little review on it for 35 mmC, and it's great. It's shutter priority, so you can set a shutter speed, and it will tell you your aperture. But it's built in such a beautifully sort of dense metal. And it's a gorgeous camera. It's got on it is a Konica Hexanon 52mm 1.8, and it gave me everything I wanted with half frame, which I didn't have from the cameras I had before, which was essentially being able to focus and really set up my shots. And it's been great going out with a 36 roll and getting 72 shots through a day. And for me, the build quality really is special. It reminds me of there's a camera I bought. I found a charity shop. Feels gorgeous. And I when you did your TopCon, the shutter lever on this camera, which is a Miranda. I'm not sure which model it is, but this I was in a charity shop, and for £3 I got this Miranda camera with all the fixings. It's got, and this thing feels so dense and so beautiful in terms of its engineering. I believe they were German. I think Miranda were famous for having very overtly sexy ads.
Yes.
For their cameras in the 60s.
It's Japanese.
Yeah.
Japanese. Yeah.
Japanese. So apologies.
Yeah.
But I've got adapters as well for, I think, M42 lenses from 30. I can't remember. I got all of Miranda, basically. And it's a lovely camera, but there's something about these cameras made in the 60s. Again, it was that era where there was no built-in obsolescence. These things are made to last.
Yeah.
I got auto reflex. I highly recommend it if you can find one. They're generally a lot cheaper than
we're starting to lose you a little bit now. We just about kept up with what you're just saying there, but you're incredibly pixelated as well now. So
yeah, we're going to switch off the video to preserve bandwidth.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
How do I do that?
On the
video, I've turned off my camera. Is that better?
Yeah.
Where shall I come back in? What shall
No. It was fine. It just started to break up. I think we're good. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll that could all stay in. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. What lens do you have on that Miranda?
On the Miranda, I've got Auto Miranda 50mm 1.9. I've got a bunch of other lenses as well that came with it. But it's just so beautiful, and you can take the top off. Look down thing as well. It's just such a gorgeous camera. Yeah. I've never used the thing, but it's in absolutely perfect, pristine condition. I mean, there's not a scratch on it. Time, and this is the problem as well. I get caught up in gas, and I still have drawers and drawers full of cameras I still haven't touched and used yet. So I've got to get my shit together and start trying other ones out before I start thinking of the next one.
Yeah, I think those are some underrated lenses. The Miranda lenses. It's just there's some good stuff there.
Yeah, have you ever talked Miranda on one of your episodes?
I don't think we have in a lot of detail, have we?
No.
Well, there we go.
I mean, certainly I don't know how much detail we can go into, but I know that most of the well, this is a funny one in itself. But they teamed up with Solidgore, which we generally think about. When we think about Solidgore, we tend to think about similar to like Vivitar, where they would use all the manufacturers to, and then the Solidgore name would be attached to it. Yet back in those days, they did actually make the lenses.
Yeah. I almost bought a Solidgore 35 2.8 for Contax RF mount the other day. Just missed out. Like they made some good stuff, and the Miranda cameras. I think before Solidgore made their auto Miranda lenses, they had Zuno lenses for that mount. Like there's some cool stuff. I don't know, Anil, if you've got any of the Zuno lenses with them, but I just think that's a hugely underrated lens system.
I just again, in terms of feel, the sort of top cameras I own, and I'd imagine they're probably available at quite a cheap rate online. It's one of those brands that sort of is out of fashion or is underlooked.
Well, it's also a brand that I don't think you can just easily go out and get yourself an adapter either. They are available, rare adapters on eBay. That's ebay.com rather than anywhere else. Ramir, he does them. I don't know if there's any other people that do them. But yeah, you can get adapters for them. But like I say, you have to go hunting for them.
Yeah, I think I've got a Miranda to M42. Oh no, it's the same lens. 5. Yeah, I've got exactly the same lens with slightly different. Well, Auto Miranda 1.9, 5 centimeters. One's a F equals 50 millimeters. Just a different. One's a European one, perhaps. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Jesus, I've got 2 copies of exactly the same lens.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that.
I just feel like we're about to go down the Miranda rabbit hole with M40 threads and things like that as well, which we're going to have to do that another time. And I think this is actually seeing that we're only just hanging on to you at the moment, Anil. So I think what we'll do a little bit of coffee announcements and things like that, because we really need to catch up with that. We're going to go back in time, because we were talking earlier on about how far back did we do since we last actually said thank you to anybody, and we decided it was a long way, so we need to go back a long way. So if I've read some of these things out before, I'm sorry about that, but we just can't remember. So I'd rather make sure we catch everybody. So 9th of December, David Kaufman, thank you for providing a small respite from the stresses and worries of life that's playing out these days, and also for the gas. So thank you, David. Thank you, Brian Walworth. Then there's Bernd from Cologne. Great show. Keep practicing pronouncing Hollay. Right, I think I got that right, hopefully. Jeremy North on the 12th of December says, thanks for continuing mirth and occasional lens cut talk. We've done a fair bit on lenses today, which is good for us. Mm-hmm. Then there's Gumboot Dave, and he wrote on the 17th of December, I've only been listening for a few months, but you guys are my favourite podcast. Something about the mix of great information and dysfunctionality that keeps me coming back. So thank you very much there, Gumboot Dave. Christopher J. May, thank you. Mike Epstein, thank you again. Then Nigel Cliff, great show this week. Clad is so knowledgeable about all things Soviet. Been thinking about buying a Zenitar 16mm for some time now. I need to get one. It's Vlad, not Clad. Vlad.
I thought he was making a pun on CLA or something.
Maybe. I think he thinks his
name. No. Now that you read it out that way, yes, it's clearly.
That's it. So Gary Florjak, thank you. Barry Carr, thank you. Randy Reed for you on Instagram on the 31st of December. And Randy wrote, great podcast, guys. I think it was doing this on a phone. I enjoy it very much. Looking forward to 2021 and hearing your upcoming shows, and if you can, be like Cole. Well, thank you very much, Randy. Appreciate that. Then Lawrence Dunn, then Brian Walworth again, coffee supporter, thank you, whoever you are. Nigel Cliff again, good to have you back after the break. An interesting and varied show as ever, thank you. Then we have Kai, who says, welcome back, peeps. We were missed, it seems. Thank you for a fun and gassy past year. Stay well and keep up the good work. And if you can, maybe weekly. Yeah, who knows? We'll try to bring them back. It's just been really difficult for us to get together. And then Robert Danny, welcome back. And happier new year ahead. Let's hope so. And then again, Mike Epstein, and again, Mike Florjak. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm sorry it's taken so long to say thank you to all those people as well. Anil, are you back again?
I'm back.
Yes, and you're sounding good. Anil, thank you very, very much for being back on with us again.
No, it's been a pleasure, guys. Really nice to chat to you again.
Yeah. No, it's been excellent, and thanks for sharing with us your new book, City by the Sea. And where can people get that?
If you go to fistfulofbooks.com, you can see it there. Or if you go to anilmistryphoto.com, there's a link there as well.
That's it. And you've got you mentioned there's a Facebook group based around that as well, around Unusual Eye.
If you go on Facebook and type in Unusual Eye Photography or Unusual Eye, it will come up.
That's it. And you can be found in other places too. So where else can people find the kind of things that you do?
On Instagram at Anil Mistry, that's ANILMISTRY, and on Twitter at Anil Mistry. On Instagram at Anil Photo at Anil Mistry.
John, just repeat that one. I think you just dropped out.
Yeah, on Instagram at Anil Mistry Photo, that's ANILMISTRY Photo, and on Twitter at Anil Mistry.
Fantastic. Have you got any shout-outs you might want to give while you're here?
I'd like to give a shout-out to Simon Robinson at Fistful of Books for being so helpful, and it's been nice to work with you. Secondly, just to the three of you guys for being so great. Thank you.
Thank you. Right then, Perry, how can people follow you?
You can find me on Flickr and Instagram at PerryG. I have just started posting pictures again. I posted on Instagram for the first time in months yesterday, so hopefully I can keep that up. And that's pretty much it.
Excellent. Any shout-outs?
I do not have any shout-outs this week.
Okay. I've got a shout-out, and because I was chatting to Eric Casloose, a friend of the show, earlier. He who was it? The New York Red Sox, his big team, something like that. Anyway, they're all the same. Anyway, so he's a big fan of that football team or whatever they are. Yeah, great. Thanks for that little chat we had earlier. And I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic, which is also the name of my website, where you can buy lots of lens caps, and I'm doing more and more lens caps and flexible caps that go on the front, and they'll go over Mamiya TLR lenses and things like that. So that's a good place for that. I'm also on on eBay as well, but going via my site, especially if you're international, you get a better deal on the post generally, and sometimes a better discount as well. Also, I'm on Twitter as Simon4. I also do another podcast called the Large Format Photography Podcast that goes out every 2 weeks or so. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So once more, thank you very much, Anil.
You're very welcome. Cheers, guys.
And thank you, Perry, as well. And that's it for this week's show. Our music is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It's called Octo Blues. And that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed this week's show. And if you can, be like Carl.